All right. Hello everyone, salamat pagi to our friends over in Malaysia. Magandang umaga, maayong buntag to everyone in the Philippines, and good evening to all of us here in the United States. It is past 7 o'clock, just by a little bit. My name is Jerome. I'm one of your lovely co-hosts for tonight's episode, and I'm joined by Vivian Chow, my other lovely co-host, as well as our founder and artistic director, Potirang Kamanis, and our guest speaker, Dr. Ayesah Uy Abubakar. For folks who are new to our program, what is Rinayung? We're taking the name from the magical boat of Bantugan in the Maranao epic Darangan, and Rinayung is a boat that can travel distance. It can fly. It can dive into the depths of the ocean, carrying a number of things such as people, magical creatures, and plants and vegetation. Rinayung is a symbol of diaspora, and it is up to us folks in the Philippine diaspora, to uplift these traditions and preserve them, reclaim and assert them, so that these traditions can live long, sustain long, for generations to come. And with that said, welcome everyone. This is episode 28. I paused for a second because I had to think about that. This is episode 28 of our Rinayung web series. It's our second season, and we are very much excited for y'all to hear from Dr. Ayesah tonight. Next slide, please, Vivian.
So just as a heads up for those who are viewing us on Facebook, and also us moderators, speaker, and founder in the StreamYard, this is going to be a live event that is posted on Facebook. Once it is posted on Facebook, it will automatically save and it'll become in Kinding Sindaw's archive. So just as a heads up, if later on when there is an interactive part for questions or comments, just know that it will be posted somewhere, and it will be public for everyone to view. So if you're not comfortable about something, or you want to be a little bit mindful about who is the viewers and your comments and stuff, you can either just private message me and Jerome, or let us know after the event is over. And in addition to that, just as a heads up, the speakers who are on Rinayung are not paid, and they are volunteering their time to help us learn more about certain events that are happening either in the homeland or across the world. So just as a heads up for that. And in addition, I do want to advise that there might be some topics that might be uncomfortable, or a little bit touchy for some people, and it's not in Kinding Sindaw's motive to bring any harm. But if anything does come up, and as mentioned before, you would like to speak to me, Jerome, or Potri about those, our private messages are open, and we would love to address it, just to make sure that we are cognizant of everyone who is watching, and that we move forward helping everyone. And then, like I mentioned, there is an interactive part at the end of the episode where you will be able to have questions or comments. Our comments are also live right now on Facebook if you want to leave us anything there, positive messages. And then in the question part, if you do have anything, we are able to put it on the live screen as well so that everyone who is watching is able to see the comments and a little bit more viewer friendly. So just keeping all those in mind when you are participating with us. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Vivian. Now, moving into the next one. What's on the menu for tonight, folks? So these are opening remarks. I've introduced myself as well as my lovely co-host, our founder, artistic director, and our guest speaker a little bit. We're also going to give a quick shout out to our funders and our greatest supporters. We'll also have land acknowledgments to, really understand we are occupying unceded land here in the United States, and we are also here to honor Indigenous peoples of the Philippines from whom we are learning all these traditions, from whom we are learning about their current issues, and to really show as much respect as we can for them. And then the floor goes right to our guest speaker of the night, Dr. Ayesah. We'll have some open Q&A. So as Vivian mentioned, folks, put your questions in the comments. Clearly, I need more coffee. It's my second cup today. And then we'll wrap things up with some announcements from the community, our closing salutation, and maybe, a little bit more if y'all have other things you want to bring up. Okay. And then for our funders, who are our biggest supporters, or actually, just kidding, land acknowledgement. I
No
need
problem.
coffee.
So just like how Jerome mentioned before, we do want to take time to honor the land that Kinding Sindaw is currently on, which is in New York. And then we also want to take time to acknowledge the land from back at home. So first, we will have Teresa Bear Fox of the Mohawk Nation. Um, she will be singing for us. Just 1 second while I have that loaded.
It's good to be here with all of you. Kangyofokta Yungyats. Kangyofokta is my Mohawk name. It means I'm at the back of a crowd of people or at the end of a long line of people. And I'd like to share a song with you all. It's in honor of the women. What I'm saying in the language, which is Ganyak Geha, the Mohawk language, I'm saying that women have good minds, women have good medicine, and women have a lot of strength. And the Odalit Salami is like the generations of the teachings that have been carried on from one generation to the next. So I hope you like this song. Yung kwani kong tiyo, niya yung kwe yung kwano wat selio. Ya yung way, your way, your way, yung kwazat santelaya. Ya yung way, ya yung way. Ayo, 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 way. We hana yo, way ahead, way ahead. Way ahead, we hana yo, way ahead, way ahead, way ahead, yo de le telane, ni ya kyung kwe, yung kwa ni kong yo. Ya yung kwe yung kwano kwa telio. Ya yung kwe your way yung kwazat santelaya. Nia Kyung Kwe, Nia Kyung Kwe. Ayo, 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 weya. We hana yo, weya he, weya he, weya he. We hana yo, weya he, weya he, weya he. Yo de le tselane, ni ya kyung kwe, ni ya kyung kwe. Yoko wa.
And we do have one for the Philippines. Oh, that's a little. Let me see. This is from Sitio Beso. She is actually from the Tausug people, and she has also taught us virtually during the pandemic. Let's see. There we go.
Susulang lupa ulaan cinta usung marurung iwan ma isung asusulan lupa lupa lingkap dato salib inat ipan di kami ukat landum aku sugimba kakat lupa sugan dilan ulasing dayang ninamu kalupahan landu namu kalasahan.
So thank you to our folks who are able to chant and perform for us for land acknowledgement. And
All right, here we go. So now a huge shout out to our funders and supporters. Without their contributions to Kinding Sindaw in one way or another, we would not have this web series today. We would not have even lasted 30 years. Yes, I said 30. That's how old we are. So huge shout out to the Lloyd and Nicholas Lewis and Reginald F. Lewis Foundation, who's been one of our biggest supporters since our inception. Huge shout out to La Mama Experimental Theater Club, where we have been resident artist company for many years as well. To Lotus Music and Dance, who helped us really gain our roots here in the dance community of New York City. And they've also introduced some of our guest speakers to us back in our Land is Life arc back in season 1. We also would like to give a huge thank you to New York City Council, the Howard Gilman Foundation, the Department of Cultural Affairs of New York City, NYFA, Dance NYC, and Kidney Care of the Treasure Coast. So maraming salamat sa inyong lahat. Thank you so much, everyone. We look forward to your continued support so that we can continue providing quality programming for the community. And now, let's meet our guest speaker tonight, which is Dr. Ayesah Uy Abubakar. So she is the head of the research cluster on ethnography and development at the Borneo Institute for Indigenous Studies at the University of Malaysia, Sabah. She's a senior lecturer at the International Relations Program of the Faculty of Social Science and Humanities at that same university. She teaches human rights, international humanitarian law, and peace and development, among many others. Back in 2019, she's published a book on peace building and sustainable human development. I think, oh no, I didn't have that book yet, but I have two other things that she's contributed to, which I will also purchase so I can keep them in my office. But she's also done a lot of work in terms of the pursuit of the Bangsamoro right to self-determination, which is published on Springer and UMS Press, and has co-authored a chapter on Mindanao in a book called Comparing Peace Process. She's also a recipient of the Japan International Cooperation Agency Presidential Award for her work on peace building in Southeast Asia. She's one of 3 architects on a track 1.5 peace building program called Consolidation for Peace for Southern Thailand, Aceh, and Mindanao. The COP is a program by the Research and Education for Peace, University of Science Malaysia, Southeast Asian Conflict Studies Network, and Japan International Cooperation Agency from the period of 2006 to 2014. And for the past 4 years, Dr. Ayesah has represented Malaysia at the ASEAN Women Peace Registry, which is a pool of practitioners in conflict resolution and peace building organized by the ASEAN Institute for Peace and Reconciliation. So in terms of research, apart from conflict and peace studies, she's also conducted research on child rights, unaccompanied and separated children, and undocumented persons in Malaysia. She's also active in the Southeast Asian Human Rights Network, the Global Partnership for the Prevention of Armed Conflict in Southeast Asia, where she joins human rights and peace-related research, training, and advocacy. And to further boost her credentials, she completed her PhD in social sciences, specifically in development studies, at University of Science Malaysia back in 2013. She also has a master in development management at the Asian Institute of Management and a certificate in intercultural management, American focused, from the Japan America Institute of Management Science. She also has her BA in film and audiovisual communication from the College of Mass Comm at UP Diliman. So without further ado, folks, I present to you the esteemed Ayesah Uy Abubakar, PhD.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning. Magandang gabi. It's not good morning there in New York, but it's evening. But here in Malaysia, it's around 8 in the morning. So thank you again to Kinding Sindaw for inviting me. It's my pleasure. I know that Kinding Sindaw is very active in the US promoting indigenous cultures, which I do admire. That is really very important, especially for the younger generation of Filipino Americans. So I'd like now to proceed to my presentation. So for this morning, I'd like to share with you the topic about how the conflict and peace process experience that we have had in Bangsamoro, Mindanao, Philippines, has in fact contributed to the overall peace building process in Southeast Asia. Let me see. Okay, first I'd like to show you, where is the current Bangsamoro region or the barn that has been the result of the peace process in the Philippines. So this is what constitutes the barn. Okay, it includes the provinces of Tawi-Tawi, Sulu, Basilan, Lanao del Sur, and Maguindanao, while it also has 2 additional cities, the main cities of Marawi and Cotabato. And in the Cotabato province, there are also 63 barangay units that has also been now is part of BARMM. Okay, and then just a little brush of history of the whole conflict in Philippines. Okay, I'm sure many of you understand that the Bangsamoro areas, have originally been um, These are the ancestral domains of the Bangsamoro people. And when we talk about the Bangsamoro people, we actually have 13 ethno-linguistic groups that includes the Tausug, Sama Banginis, or Samal, the Yakans, the Badjaws, Jamamapon, Sangil, Palawani, Mulbog, the Iranon, Maguindanao, Maranao, Calagan, and Kolibugan. So it's a very rich group of people, with all their culture and heritage. But fortunately, what binds them together as a people is the religion and the history that they have had in their ancestral domain in Mindanao. So for many years before Philippines saw the conquest or the arrival of the foreigners, okay, mainly the Spaniards and other groups. The whole area has always been governed by these indigenous people, and even during that time, the Bangsamoro area already have a well-developed sultanate system. And I'm sure you have heard that there are actually three um, sultanates. Okay, the main two sultanates would be the Sultanate of Sulu, the Sultanate of Maguindanao, and the third one will be the Sultanate of Pangampang Ranao. Okay, Pangampong Ranao. So you have had a governance system by these three sultanate system. And because of this new this governance, the sultans, the people and the datus have always been fighting for their territory, okay, to make sure that they will not be banished from their own ancestral domain. And this lasted even during the American occupation in the Philippines and even during the Japanese occupation. So for the longest time, the area has been ruled by traditional leadership, not through that sultanate system. And then when the Philippine government was finally established by the Americans, okay, this traditional system continued, but later on has been weakened because of the assimilation policy of the U.S. government. Okay? Until such time that new administrations, like it started from during the time of President Marcos, um, that it was really during that time that from a traditional leadership, then we saw a revolutionary movement within this area. So this is where we had revolutionary leadership, mainly the establishment of the Moro National Liberation Front, or MNLF. And then later on, you may also read, even on the internet, that the MNLF uh, became, there was a separation within MNLF, and then we have had the MILF, or the Moro Islamic Liberation Front. Okay, so from traditional leadership, then we have a nationalist revolutionary leadership. Okay, so when we also talk about the conflict of the Bangsamoro with the Philippine state, we actually identify it as a self-determination or an identity-based type of conflict. And we use this term because it is not only about it's not only about human rights that is the issue in this type of conflict, but it is really the root issue of political freedoms, territory, religion, and sociocultural. So it's the whole identity and preservation of the people that is at stake. This is why the conflict has persevered for many many years, and this is also why in some literatures you might also read it as a protracted type of conflict, meaning that it has been going on for a very long time. Okay. But the good news is that in our lifetime, well, at least in my lifetime, we have seen the resolution of this conflict. As I showed earlier in the other slide, we have had the experience of having two peace processes, one with the Moro National Liberation Front, and the more recent one is with the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, or MILF. So it is through this MILF process that we have um, gain the new Bangsamoro government or BARM. So it was in 2012 that finally a framework agreement on the Bangsamoro was signed. Framework agreement is basically a roadmap where they have all the schedules and the the main issues that they want to include in the agreement. Whereas the comprehensive agreement on the Bangsamoro that was signed in 2014, it is really the accumulation of many of those details of the peace agreement. So, in terms of scholarship in conflict resolution, we can fairly say that the comprehensive agreement or the Bangsamoro peace process, I think it's the most comprehensive type of peace process that you can find anywhere in the world. Having this extensive and systematic way of doing the peace process, and even in the agreements that they have had signed. Okay. I'm also showing you in this slide just some of the highlights, just before we went on to a more successful signing of the peace agreement. The meeting between President Aquino and MILF Chair Murat in Tokyo was really an interesting turn of events, to push further the peace process. And then another behind the scene activity or program that has also contributed much to peace process is the Consolidation for Peace that has been organized annually. And this is like, as Jerome mentioned, it is a track 1.5 kind of intervention where we bring together not only the formal parties of the peace process, but also civil society group leaders. So this was the highlight of the COP, where we brought everybody to Hiroshima, Japan. Yeah, there was some mistake there. It's not Mindanao, Hiroshima. So we brought everybody to Hiroshima, Japan, and this is a partnership between University Science Malaysia and the Japan International Cooperation Agency. So it is an interesting experience because for the first time, an international organization such as JICA has funded this type of peace building process. Okay. And then, as you may also know, what is unique in this new Bangsamoro government is that while it is to some extent, it retains the term autonomous. It's a region with autonomy, political autonomy, but then it is an improvement from the past ARMM or Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, mainly because of this whole structure. If before the ARMM was mainly a devolution of some powers, but you still retain um, a unitary based kind of relationship between the ARMM and the Philippine state. This time around, the BARM is also still within the Philippine state. It has not seceded or it has not left the political governments in the country, but at the same time, it has a better political relationship because it deals with the central government or the state government in an asymmetrical relationship. It also has a ministerial and parliamentary system. So similar to Malaysia, I guess that's the best description, where you have a parliamentary system and that people who have been voted into power, then they are also the one ruling the government. And then another good innovation for this peace process is that there is a mechanism where the Bangsamoro government continues to have a good communication and coordination platform with the central government through the intergovernmental relations mechanism or IGR. So just to show you that before reaching the peace agreement, it went through, a lot of work, a lot of process, even beyond the peace negotiation itself. There is actually a process where they had to establish the Bangsamoro Transition Commission. And until today, this is the same commission that is ruling the BARM. We have yet to have our election in the BARM only in 2025. And then for this peace process to be institutionalized in the Philippines, naturally it had to go through Congress and to the Senate. And through the process of the Senate and Congress, naturally also we have had some revisions of the whole the law, following the agreement. So it wasn't an easy process. In fact, it's like, if you have a very difficult peace negotiation, going through the constitutional procedures or going through the Philippine Senate and Congress itself is another very, very challenging process for the Bangsamoro people, and not only the negotiators. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, it is the Bangsamoro Transition Authority, or if earlier I mentioned BTC, now it's the Bangsamoro Transition Authority, but the same group of people that is now ruling the BARM. Okay, and it is led by the MILF uh, Chairman Murad Ibrahim. And here you see President Duterte and the chair of the MILF negotiating panel, Mr. Mohagir Iqbal. Okay. Okay, so who are the actors in this peace process? I'm not going to go through the whole gamut of identifying everybody who has been involved, but I just wanted to show in this slide that really this peace process involved many, many people, involved many sectors, not only in Mindanao, in Bangsamoro area, but the whole country, the Philippines, and also international organizations and states, including the countries of Saudi Arabia, Japan, UK, and for some time even US, OIC, and EU. So there is an involvement, the whole ecosystem of the peace process really involved international and local actors. So this is how dynamic this peace process is. Okay, and then if we would like to to sum up what constitute this peace process, or what are the novelties that this peace process has produced and given us. For one is that while the peace process in the beginning was a direct type of negotiation, eventually there we had a third party involvement, not only during this MILF, but even during the time of an MNLF, there was also third party involvement. And then because of the MILF peace process, it is for the first time that we see a Bangsamoro Development Agency, BDA. Even before they signed an agreement, they agreed that rehabilitation and development had to take place while they were still negotiating. And this was through the BDA. And we also saw the deployment of a peacekeeping mission, which is very unique. It is not a UN peacekeeping mission, but it is something that has been organized by Malaysia with the participation of other countries in ASEAN, like Indonesia, and even the involvement of Japan, Brunei, and also EU. So this IMP itself is a unique contribution to this peace process. Now, when we talk about how about when you finally sign an agreement, what happens next? Normally, in the field of conflict resolution, we have this term DDR, demobilization, rehabilitation of former fighters or combatants. Okay, so but in this case of the MILF, we see this new term being introduced to us called normalization. While it is true that there is some sort of a DDR in this peace process, together with the DDR, there is an important task also for the government, for the Philippine government, to ensure that the security setup or arrangement in the Bangsamoro is also addressed. That includes the disarmament of private armed groups, and other security sector reforms also had to be instituted. And then, of course, I mentioned that it has a framework of agreement, and finally a comprehensive agreement where it puts into details, a lot of the things that they've agreed on, between the MILF and the Philippine government. Okay? And then most importantly, in terms of funding, how is BARM going to exist? How is it going to be funded? In this agreement, it is very clear, what are the committed funding and resources by the national government or the Philippine state, and it also includes block grants and share um, of national funds, in a very um, I think it's about 5% of the income revenues of the whole country, is dedicated at a certain period. So it is very clear in those details of where does BARM get its funding in order for it not only to survive but really to fully develop itself as a new government. Okay, and then another is the infrastructure, the whole infrastructure of peace. Okay, so as you may see, uh, there are involvement of many countries and many international organizations, but it is always like a sharing of work between local peace builders and local leaders, and national leaders, and in the international community. Now going to ASEAN, where we are all part of in this region. I know for Filipino Americans, you must also be interested, whether ASEAN is still very much relevant, especially in situations of conflict. We all know that even during this COVID, ASEAN has been embroiled with all these conflicts in the region, to the extent mainly in Myanmar, and to some extent we may feel somehow disheartened. What is ASEAN doing? With all the conflicts in the region. Okay, so when we talk about the ASEAN bodies, there are few ASEAN bodies that are especially relevant when you talk about conflict and peace processes. Okay, more recently, there is this new ASEAN Institute for Peace and Reconciliation. While this AIPR is not a mediator, it's not, it is not tasked to be a mediator in any conflict in the region, but it is mandated, to push for ways and means related to the conflict and peace process in the region. Another body is the ICHAR, which is more famous. ICHAR has been doing well because it has been at the forefront of pushing for human rights issues in the region. And then we also have the more traditional ASEAN bodies like the Commission on Women, the Rights of Women and Children, that has always been a stable, a constant promoter of the general well-being and rights of women and children, and especially those that are involved in conflict situation. You can also see here a logo of the ASEAN University Network. You might ask, how is the ASEAN University Network involved in this? The ASEAN University Network actually has been doing this program on human rights and peace education. And I am part, together with my other colleagues in ASEAN, of this AUN Human Rights and Peace Education Network. So for the past 5 years now, we've been introducing human rights and peace studies at the institutions of higher learning in the universities throughout ASEAN. And we are not only introducing human rights and peace studies, but we have also developed materials, books, textbooks on how to teach human rights and peace studies in this region. So hopefully with peace education as a long-term peace building strategy, we hope that we will have a more impact on the conflict and peace process in the region. Another is the AHA Center. This is actually the Humanitarian Assistance Center. So when there are humanitarian crises in the region, they are the ones that are deployed in ASEAN. Okay. So in our experience of the consolidation for peace, from the years 2006 up to 2014, we have had this program that included the conflict in Aceh, southern Thailand, and Mindanao. Okay, at the time, Myanmar was already, also in a conflict situation, but we have not included then Myanmar during that time. But with all the things that we've learned, organizing our COP, it was an opportunity, especially for people in the Bangsamoro and Mindanao, to share their experience. And the same way with Aceh, to share their experience, especially this is useful to our friends in southern Thailand who have an ongoing peace dialogue with their government. So all the learnings that we gain from our Bangsamoro Mindanao peace process is actually something that has have always been useful, with other parts of with the other peace builders in the region, and even for people of Myanmar, even before their coup attempt, the recent coup attempt, there have been many friends from Myanmar who have also visited Mindanao. So people from Aceh have also visited Mindanao, southern Thailand, and the same way, people from Mindanao and Bangsamoro region have also visited the same places, Myanmar, southern Thailand, and Aceh. So all these exchanges of learnings and networking among the peace building community has in fact helped a lot, in building more knowledge and capacity and expertise within ASEAN. So when we talk about peace building, it is really about not only doing all these activities like Peace Week, but or any other standalone activities. But the main agenda of peace building is really to bring in transformation with to all the people involved in the peace process, and we do this through many programs, one of which is peace education. Others would be through building of peace constituency and making sure that more people understand and appreciate the ongoing peace processes. Okay. One observation that we have had in the network, in the Southeast Asian Conflict Studies Network, is that what is most important in peace building is that it has to be built within the community itself, the roots of the conflict. And there has to be a balance of internal and external interest. And this is very important because we all know that in any conflict experiences or peace processes experiences in the world, it is a norm that there will always be actors coming in, to Bangsamoro, to Mindanao, to Philippines, wanting to be part of it. But if it is something that is not managed well, then we will have a situation wherein, like in other parts of the world, in Africa or in the Balkans, you will have less ownership. The people themselves will have less ownership, and you don't want international actors to drive the whole peace process. Rather that you want the local community to own the peace process, because in the end, okay, it is the local community who is going to live in these areas. Okay. International actors will be leaving these areas. So in terms of sustainability, it's important that the local communities have to own any peace process. And this is also one way that we look at in terms of the region of Southeast Asia. This is why we do all these activities for ASEAN, like the COP, because it is our ambition that Southeast Asian people would come together, and build expertise in peace building, in peace processes, and we would want to help resolve our conflicts in the region, and instead of allowing people outside to drive the peace process. Of course, it is also good that we get help from other organizations outside and even countries. But again, the strength of the success of the peace process really lies within the communities itself. Okay, so this is what happens when you work in an protracted armed conflict environment. You have participation of international actors or third parties. You have the main process itself, which needs to be protected somehow. To some extent, it becomes exclusive, but it doesn't mean that it cannot also involve civil society groups and grassroots communities. And this is where our COP experiment is very much an interesting development, because we have proven that while you are able to protect the formal peace process, there is a way that civil society groups and grassroots communities can also be involved in that process. Okay. So in the end, I would like to leave this conclusion to everybody that while it is true that we continue to have many conflict issues in Southeast Asia, our experience in the Bangsamoro conflict proves that it is possible to have a resolution. Um, Peace is possible even in protracted armed conflicts such as Bangsamoro or Mindanao, and that at this stage, there is in fact a growing knowledge of experience and expertise among the Southeast Asians who are doing this kind of work. And the Bangsamoro and Mindanao process provides many ideas on how conflicts can be transformed and how we could in fact build on slowly social justice, equality, and peace. And that again, people in Southeast Asia, we can all learn from each other and contribute to building peace in the region. So, in a nutshell, this is what the Bangsamoro peace process can contribute to Southeast Asia, and perhaps what Southeast Asian peace building communities can also contribute to the world. Okay, so I end now my presentation, and I'll be very happy if there will be some questions or comments from the audience. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Ayesah. So one of the questions that we had for you, I'm just gonna pull this up really quick if my computer lets me. So, okay. So one of the questions I actually was thinking about, there was one slide in your presentation where it mentioned like all the different key players in the conflict resolution and peace building process. And I was looking at, different faith-based groups, and also thinking about in one of your last slides how you want to keep these processes like really rooted in the community and having that balance between internal and external interests, and how to moderate, the different actors that come into play. It's very complex entity that I'm thinking about. How exactly do you keep that balance? Because I liken it to how nonprofit organizations go into different countries to implement like a public health intervention. So let's say a contraception intervention. They go in, they implement their program. So they're external actors. They come in, they do their thing, and they leave. And then the sustainability. When these international actors, these external actors come into play for the peace building and conflict resolution processes, um, is there any sort of like skill sharing or teaching that happens so that way these skills are maintained within the community of interest or the main area, so that way when these actors leave, they can keep things going? What does that look like?
Okay. Thank you, Jerome. I will answer your question indirectly, again, based on the experience of the peace building community in Bangsamoro and Mindanao. We have been lucky that this is already the second peace process that we have. Like we had an experience with the MNLF and with the MILF. And naturally, even in the early years of the MILF, there were only few NGOs, locally based NGOs in Mindanao who have really been doing many peace building work. And then even during that time, with the MILF peace process that started in early 2000, there were also just a handful of Bangsamoro NGOs. So they were just in their early years. So it was not easy for these Bangsamoro NGOs also to attract donor funding, because naturally they don't have the track record. So there has always been a struggle, whether donors give funding to the traditional and already proven NGOs or to the newly set up Bangsamoro organizations. So we had to go through those difficult process of competition, among the NGO community. Okay, but one thing is for sure is that because it's the process, the peace process and the the work also of the civil society groups have been ongoing for decades. Um, so people have actually learned to say no if they are not in agreement with the donor communities and they are not welcome in these communities. So a donor community, for instance, can hire or can fund an NGO based in Manila, and they can do projects in the conflict communities. But the conflict communities are have already learned their lesson, so they will not have second thoughts of saying no and saying no to money, because money is not a driver of peace. For them, money is not the solution for peace. That is not the main ingredient for peace. But it's really about whether the communities themselves will have the power and the hand, to decide what they want in terms of rehabilitation or development. So for quite some time we have had that experience, and we have because the NGOs communities itself in Bangsamoro in Mindanao also have learned to live together and to accompany each other. It doesn't matter whether that NGO is from an indigenous people's NGO, whether they are traditionally the bigger NGOs or the NGOs from the Bangsamoro group, or they are Davao-based NGOs. These NGOs also have gone through a process of transformation. They have learned to work together. So if there are people that are coming to them and they are not part of the group, that's why there are many coalitions or networks of these NGOs. Then it's also I guess the protective mechanism for them to insist that look, we have been here and we know what works. So it's either that you listen to us, because if you want to work and help in the conflict affected communities, then you have to listen to what we know, what works in this area. Yeah, so maybe in a nutshell, what is important for local stakeholders to own a process is to learn to say no, and that it should not be attracted for the sake of resources alone, because in fact local people have so much to offer, to those wanting to also work in this conflict affected communities, or even in any development projects for that matter. Local people have much to offer, in as much that outsiders or external actors have to offer can offer their resources. So it's always a 50-50% type of a sharing of resources and knowledge and expertise.
That is the perfect answer. Thank you so much. It also ties back to a lot of what I learned in public health when it comes to doing different interventions. Another question we had: do you have any stories that you could tell us briefly about ancestors and relatives and their experience and their struggle to keep self-determination of the Muslims of Mindanao?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that question, Jerome. It's in many of my webinars, actually, that is a question that is very interesting and that has not been asked of me. So I think it's a good opportunity to share, especially about our indigenous heritage, culture and heritage in Mindanao. Yeah, my family is from Kidapawan, Cotabato, and my father's family. I'm, as you see in my name, I'm my mother is Chinese, Spanish, Uy, but my father is a Maguindanao. My father's family is also part of the Sultanate of Maguindanao. But you see, the whole Sultanate of Maguindanao has a big genealogy silsila, so there are many branches to it, but we do belong to some of those. We do belong to that sultanate too. So for many of the traditional families, like my father's family, his father, his grandfather, they were datus. And when contrary to other countries like Malaysia, where datuship is given as a title, in our communities in Bangsamoro, datuship is claimed only if you have the bloodline. Okay, and that purity or the percentage, the higher percentage of bloodline that you have with the sultanate, only can you claim that datuship. So my just like other traditional families, because of the wars, the conflict that we have had, um, if before our ancestors were very rich, like they would say that they own, a big part of the land in Mindanao, but of course over the years, in order for them to survive and also to continue their struggle for right to self-determination, not many of them also have lost, a lot of their assets. It's just so lucky that, some of their children, have become professionals, and this was in the 1960s, 70s, where many of the children of these traditional leaders and datus were educated in Manila. So my family is part of that, and I guess I'm like that, the second generation that, from my father, that has been lucky to have had a good education. So, but then again, it makes me appreciate, better, the hard work, the struggle of my families, our ancestors, in order for them to survive, that I am surviving today and I'm doing very well. So all our ancestors, the tatos, have really paid the price in investing for our future, making sure that the Bangsamoro people will not be banished in our ancestral domain. Just like any other indigenous groups, or just like the Native Americans in the US, making sure that their brethren, their younger generation continue to exist and that they will do well.
Thank you, Ayesah. And then our last question of the night. How would the forthcoming national elections affect or impact on the continuing efforts to maintain peace or promote harmony and ensure a good life of peace and harmony among various indigenous communities of the Bangsamoro region?
Yes, any government in the Philippines will definitely have a huge impact on the ongoing peace process. Mind you that the peace process in the Bangsamoro is not yet done. Okay, the signing of a peace agreement and the establishment of the BARM is just part of the process. Okay? The peace process will only end once both the MILF and the government of the Philippines agree that everything has been implemented in the peace agreement and that they will sign an exit agreement. So we will only know that perhaps another 10 years from now. If that exit agreement will be signed, then we know that the peace agreement has been fulfilled to the letter. So and Bangsamoro peace process is not the only peace process in the Philippines. As Filipino Americans and all of us who live outside the Philippines, we have to remind ourselves that there are also other peace processes with the communist and socialist parties in the Philippines, and these are, very important peace processes as well. So any future government, we hope that, or any future president for that matter, we hope that he or she will continue to commit to a peaceful resolution of all the conflicts in the Philippines. And a peaceful resolution does not necessarily mean just giving, money or uh, any dividends, but making sure that, there is really an improvement of the relationship, between the Philippine government and those people, the conflict actors that are been struggling for their own freedom. So we hope that that new president will continue to have a peace by peaceful means type of commitment to the country.
Great. Thank you so much once again. And then, Potri or Vivian, did you have any last questions before we wrap it up for tonight?
No, I'm good on my end. I think a lot of things were covered, and I really appreciate the different aspects we were able to look into peace building and also how to connect that with Indigenous communities. So I thank you for Ayesha for speaking, and also everyone who commented. Our chat is very lively, and I really appreciate that. So thank you.
And Assalamualaikum. Ayesah, thank you very much for joining us tonight. It is very valuable that enlightenment like this in the point of view of academ is very important for our audience, because up to now people are still asking me, because when I ask them, oh, come with us to Mindanao, visit us, the question is, are you sure we'll not be in danger there? Are you sure we'll not be kidnapped there? So usually I'll just answer, don't worry, you will not be kidnapped because you're with the kidnapper. It is a very sad bias that if it's only um, given a chance by our educational system that what you have given us tonight will be included in the educational system of the Philippines, then I think that colonial mentality that has been there in the minds of the people that went down through generation will be clarified, will be enlightened, and for the rest of the Philippines to understand and embrace that we Muslim people in Mindanao are on the same path of struggle for peace. Thank you very much, and hopefully you'll join us again. And for those who would like to have a piece of that speech of Dr. Ayesah tonight, get a copy of her books. Thank you. Assalamualaikum. Terima kasih banyak. Shukran.
So just to close the night, we wanted to have just a few announcements. So here are more resources and links, and also other ways that you can support, and other ways to find out what's going on currently. And in addition to that, there is a Linktree QR code for all things happening with Kinding Sindaw. If you don't follow us already on our social media pages, it'll be there as well for more resources. Um, and then there also is a flyer on the right side, just encouraging you all to get more information for the Love for Morari campaign. And also, if you would like to support that, there are more resources there for you to find out more and also to donate. And also, for ways for you to be able to connect with Dr. Aisha is either emailing her professional email or also reading her two books to find more about peace building and also human development in Southeast Asia. And I believe that is all for tonight. Is there any last words maybe Dr. Aisha would like to say, or Potria Jerome? Okay, I take silence as okay.
Yeah, okay. Maybe just a couple of words. The book on peace and conflict transformation in Southeast Asia. That's actually a source book or a textbook that we are introducing for those who want to teach peace and peace studies in the region. That is actually a free textbook that you can download online. Okay, so that is one of the projects of the ASEAN Human Rights and Peace Education Project that we have. So please feel free to go through the textbook, because it is not only we hope that it will not be a boring textbook for you, because in fact we wrote a lot of case studies about the region, especially about the Bangsamoro peace process. So if you want to learn and understand more about peace processes in Southeast Asia, please use that textbook, and I'm sure it will be very interesting also for you to read. And lastly, I'd like to thank Kinding Sindaw for inviting me, and that I hope that Kinding Sindaw will continue to promote not only the cultures of the indigenous peoples, but will also continue to promote the developments in peace process especially in this region, because I think this is really what gives us more hope that our neighborhood, Southeast Asia, will become a more peaceful region for all of us.
All right. Well,
And
thank you for. Mhm. Sorry, Potri.
oh, I just want to announce our first class for 2022 will commence this coming Saturday at 12 noon. It will just be a meet and greet for those who are interested to join. It will be in the Zoom. Please, um, we will announce it in our Facebook and our Instagram. So you can answer and you can respond, and we're going to give you the link for Zoom. And hopefully, you can do our face-to-face classes already. Thank you.
Um, your audio was a little cut off for me, Potri, but I will. Me and Jerome will be helping to follow up with the Saturday noon class and also sharing that information with everyone on our social media pages. So thank you all once again for joining us tonight. All of the resources are in the comment section if you would like to look at that later on your own time. But thank you once again to our speaker, the team that we have here with Kinding Sindaw and Dr. Rinayung, and also for all of our viewers who were able to participate.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to put, if you're interested in joining the classes on Saturday, y'all can tweet at me on my professional work Twitter. I'm going to put it right there in the comment section. Just send me a message on Twitter, or you can tweet at me saying you're interested. I will send you the Zoom link and get that all set up. Thank you so much again to Dr. Ayesah. We really would love to have you come back and maybe do an entire series in our series. So a little inception there. And thank you to our viewers at home, no matter where y'all at. Without you, we would not again have this series up and coming. So also, sorry, I know we're over time, but just to show everyone what the books that I borrowed from the library, which took a very long time, thanks NYU, um, Islam and Violent Separatism, and then Comparing Peace Processes. It's getting blurred out because of my background, but these just came yesterday. I'm gonna have a thorough read of the entire text, both of these, and I have the whole semester to keep them. So that's a good thing. I have a lot of time to digest this material. Highly recommend y'all read them as well. And Pochi, would you like to lead us in our closing salutation?
In honor of our ancestors who created and transmitted this tradition to us, with open hearts, we'd like to take them in, mind, body, and soul. And with humility, we bow as you use it to empower us as we walk our path. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.